What's up everyone, my name's Luke Lewis from guitarvivo.com and I've got something exciting to show you today. I'm going to be showing you my original method for adding chromatics and auxiliary notes to pentatonic scales in a way that keeps you sounding like you're influenced by the key and not just randomly filling in the blanks and playing the chromatic scale. I'm going to show you 3 rules that will get you playing up to 10 out of the 12 notes while still sounding relevant to the key. Just a bit of housekeeping before we go any further. In the description below is a link to the PDF where there is the transcriptions, fretboard diagrams, and some more explanations and some more licks. And if you like the video, please don't forget to show it by liking and subscribing. And if you're anything like me, you probably have some guitar friends that would enjoy this too. So please take a moment to share this with them to help the channel grow. I'd really appreciate that. If you've ever tried to add chromatics to pentatonic scales, you've probably found that it can sound a bit washy or weak, or worse, it can sound like you've just lost the key and you don't know where you are. This is where today's lesson will help because it will create strength and tonal gravity in your chromatic lines. This method works in all styles of music: funk, rock, pop, blues, fusion. However, I've labeled it bebop pentatonics simply because it's inspired by bebop scales as taught by Barry Harris, who is a phenomenal player and teacher. But don't be put off by the name bebop pentatonics. If you want, you can just call it Luke's super easy, awesome method for adding chromatics and auxiliary notes to your pentatonic scales. And yeah, here's a demo of it being used in something funky. So the first thing you need to know about this system is it's based around keeping the chromatic and auxiliary notes on upbeats and keeping our scale degrees on downbeats. This is what makes the chromatic notes sound like we're actually embellishing the key instead of leaving the key. It grounds us in the key by having the scale note on the downbeat. If you've ever looked into this subject before of chromaticizing pentatonics and you've seen a video where someone goes, just fill in the blanks, you can fill in all the frets, that glosses over the fact that the note placement, the rhythmic distribution of the notes is just as important as the note itself. It is half and half, so we have to make sure our chromatic notes go in the right place. So let's break down the system. The first thing you have to do is number each note in your pentatonic scale a 1 or a 2 based on whether it is the lowest note on the string or the highest note on the string in the position. So like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then realize that you can add an auxiliary note 1/2 step below any scale degree as long as you follow rule number 1. Start on a downbeat, play an even subdivision, so 8th or 16th notes, and add in the chromatic auxiliary note 1/2 step under the note you start on. Here's an exercise to practice that. So you can improvise freely, play any licks you want, play any subdivision you want, then hit a downbeat and implement rule number 1, come down the scale, adding in that auxiliary note under the note you start on, and play 8th or 16th note. So that's pretty cool, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but also pretty boring. We want to add in some more chromatic notes. We want to be playing 7, 8, 9, 10 note scales. That's where rule number 2 comes in. So rule number 2 is your second chromatic note must go under a note of the alternate position to your first chromatic note. So put simply, your embellishments have to alternate their position between 1 or 2. So if you start embellishing under a 1, your next one has to go under a 2, and vice versa. So try this exercise. In this exercise, we're going to start at the 8th fret of the high E string on the note C. This is a position 2 note, and we're just going to explore all the different possibilities of putting a chromatic note under a position 1 note because we started on a position 2 note. So now that you know rule number 2, you can start to experiment with it, start to mix and match, put them close together, put the alterations far apart, whatever you want, but make sure you're following the rule of alternating which position gets the auxiliary note. Also, at this point, you can experiment with ascending as well. The system works the same way. So if I was to work on this, I would pick a key. Let's go B minor at the 7th fret, work out my 1s and 2s, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then I just pick a note to start on. Let's start on this 1 at the top at the 7th fret, embellish it, and on the next 2, I can choose whether to embellish that or wait for another one. No, let's wait for another one. Yeah, let's get that one. So I'm embellishing this 2, I'm embellishing this 1, waiting for this 2 to embellish it, then I can do this 1 and this 2. So I've got some space and some close together. And you can be as creative as you want with it. You can leave them close together or far apart. You can even do every single one, which gives you like this decatonic, pentatonic pair thing. And that actually works. I don't know, that didn't work, but it works in a musical situation because it links up the scale tones with the downbeats. Now, rule number 3 is a way of adding a bit more variety. It covers the exceptions to rule number 2. So if you change direction on a chromatic note or jump off to a different interval than just descending the scale, what happens is the system starts again from the new note you start on. So whatever position you dismount your chromatic note into, that's the position that gets the next alteration. So here's a little exercise where we're just going to practice jumping off the chromatic note to different places and then showing you that you can start the system again from that landing point. So I thought what we could do is show you that funk lick I played at the start, just to break down how rule number 3 comes into play. So here's the lick slowly. It's in E, and I'm using this position here at the 7th fret. I play a little pickup, and then I start my pattern on the downbeat on this position 2 note. I embellish it, and then I land on this position 1 note. I embellish that. Then I'm going to change direction. So rule number 3, because I've just dismounted that chromatic note onto a position 1, my next alteration is going to be on a position 1. So I just play that again. Then I'm on a 2, I've just done a 1, so I can embellish this 2, and then I can embellish this 1. So all together that's 2, 1, dismount to a 1, so I can go 1 again, 2, 1. And that's really it. So when I change direction, just under that 1 here, because I landed on a 1, my next alteration comes under a 1. And I could have done it like this. So instead of doing that alteration again immediately, I could have held it off till this one here. And it still works. So there you have my super simple concept of how to add chromatic notes to the pentatonic scale and keep your grounding and not get lost and not sound like you're playing the chromatic scale. It's just 3 simple rules, but if you practice them and experiment with them, you can actually come up with some really unique sounding lines. If you want to take it further, you can experiment by yourself and see what happens if you add in chromatic notes above every note, or how you can work triplets into the system. I really hope you enjoyed this lesson, and if you want more lessons from me about the kinds of things that no one else is talking about, head over to guitarvivo.com.